Welcome back to this Health and Wellbeing New Silk Road Conference, Innovation, Cooperation, and Health Tourism. We hope you had a nice lunch. We are going to start the second period of the day. The following panel is dedicated to the topic Health Science Parks, Examples of Good Practices. As the first speaker this afternoon, we are pleased to watch the presentation of Dr. Xi Jun, President of Chengdu Health Service Industry Chamber of Commerce, speaking to us about the Suining LPT case. Professor Xi Jun, you may start your presentation, please.
Hello everyone, can you hear me so clearly? Hello, can you hear me?
Hello?
Yeah, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Shall we start? Shall we start?
Yes, you can start, please.
Okay, thank you.
大家晚上好。嘉士健康产业集团，一个梦开始的地方。遂宁国际健康城的一个介绍。我们在成渝双城经济圈，中国经济第4级。我们的人口有1亿多人口，经济总量呢近1万亿欧元，老龄化率达到20%，老龄化带来一系列严重问题。下一个。那么这些都是我们在遂宁投资的一个理由，说我们选址在遂宁呢，它是观音的故里，大家都知道观音是中国在佛教里面很有名的。
Sorry to interrupt your presentation. Can you please wait a moment because our translator is going to translate into Portuguese as you are speaking? English.
Okay, should we wait for 10 seconds or 15 seconds to wait for the translation?
Okay, thank you.
就是我们说一页，然后等一下他翻译一页。
说我们选在遂宁，那么是辐射了成都跟重庆2个特大型城市，这里交通便利，自然环境优美，人文气息浓厚，热情好客。那么我们主要是重点是在于养老是基于中国严重的老龄化，我们以9073的方式构架养老布局。 他不说呢。
他应该在通
那么医疗也是我们的一个以优势专科的方式来构架我们的医疗布局，来源于2015年中国开始发展了分级诊疗及个性化服务日益增长的这样的一个需求。那么健康管理，我们从2018年开始，根据健康中国2030的国家战略，打造全生命周期的健康管理服务的大健康产业。下一个，我们健康城所选的位置曾经是一片沼泽，通过我们3年的努力，我们的健康城拔地而起，我们的医院已经在今年要投入使用。我们将服务从0到100岁的人群，为他们提供全生命周期的健康管理服务。治胃病、管慢病、防大病是我们的工作。我们在整个健康城里面，有我们的3级医院、临床医学中心，有我们的健康枢纽、私人医生门诊，每户家庭自备体检设备，公共区域的智能体检和健康服务，让我们从家庭到社区到医院多层次医疗的健康服务体系，为我们的园区的人们提供更周到、细致的服务。我们的合作伙伴有西门子、伊科达等企业，他们使用他们的一流的设备，包括专家，包括一些学科的导入。那么我们也提供从免费到增值服务的全面健康管理套餐，包括我们的一些健康在线、家庭医生、日常疾病免费就诊、用药安全以及健康教育等。
So we offer a full package of services, including nursing care, healthcare, education, and elderly care.
Yeah, we provide a basic service and all the VIP service together for the people.
那么这里有我们的护理之家、健父的养老服务、老年病院区特色老年临床服务，包括老年住宅、健康老人的养老服务。那么从家庭到机构到医院，多层次养老健康服务，这个是我们另外的特色。
So another characteristic of this health city is that we offer specialized services for the elderly people. For example, we have nursing home for the elderly care. Senior hospital is specialized in clinical services for geriatric diseases, and senior housing with care services for the healthy elderly. So and there is also residential area with family-based health and elderly care services. So we offer services all the way from home to institutions to hospitals, and there are multi-level elderly health services.
我们可以牺牲公共分摊的利润，但不牺牲我们业主的居住生活品质，让老人可以享受最舒适的养老环境。这个就是我们的养老公寓。
We can sacrifice our share, but we don't want to compromise the living quality of the elderly. So we would like to do our best to offer the best the most enjoyable living environment for the people.
那么这个是我们整个的功能的一个布局。我们用4000平米的成本，为我们的老人提供了免费休闲的娱乐服务。再下一页，这个是我们的公寓的户型，我们进行了多达16个大项、68个细项的标准化设计，这也是参照欧洲及日本、美国最人性化的一个设计方案。我们在此基础上，为健康老人提供了56大项免费的生活娱乐服务，包括了运动健康以及康复管理、诊疗协助这方面。
So we offer a full package of services, including services like cleaning, food and beverages, and festival activities. And we offer other types of entertainment services like physical activities or cultural activities.
这是我们服务的一些标准。
So this shows the standards of our services.
这是我们家市的养老服务制定了81项这个服务的指引内容。
So we have 81 standards for our elderly care services.
说我们的健康城是一座集居住、医疗、养老为一体的大健康标杆新城，正在孕育而生。
This is a big health benchmarking city which integrates housing, medical care, and elderly care. It is emerging.
一座座家市的健康综合体也在我们刚刚发的那个区域里面悄然落成。
So more and more just good health complexes have been completed in the area that we just showed.
说未来在中国经济增长的第4级成渝发展的主轴上，更多的家市大健康综合体将更多的为市民提供全面的服务。
So in the future, on the main axis of Chengdu and Chongqing development, and more just good health complexes will provide comprehensive services to more citizens in this region.
共建“一带一路”倡议提出以来，中国与沿线国家贸易投资方面取得了令人瞩目的成果。家市健康也与“一带一路”的朋友们获得了可喜的合作佳绩。
Since the start of the One Belt, One Road initiative, China has been achieving really good outcomes of cooperation by cooperating with the countries along the Belt and Road in investment, in trade, and we would like to contribute to the collaboration in the sector of health.
人类是命运共同体，互利合作是国际潮流。同时，家事健康也欢迎各国机构和企业来中国川渝投资合作，提振投资信心，促进合作共赢，共同融入全球的价值链、产业链、供应链。
So we are living in a global village, and the global cooperation is the trend in the future. So the Just Good Health would like to welcome all the institutions and enterprises from everywhere in the world to collaborate with Sichuan and Chongqing in investment, in business, and to promote, to boost our economic growth and to achieve a win-win. We would like to contribute collaboratively to the value, to the industry, trail, and supply chain in the world.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Xi Jun, for your brilliant presentation and the example that you brought us from Suining's example of Health Park. Xie xie. Let's move on to another presentation, this time by Engineer João Almeida Nunes, President and CEO of Associação BLC3, who will talk to us about cooperation in the post-COVID era, international cooperation in health innovation on post-COVID-19. Engenheiro João Almeida Nunes, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you so much. Just a second. Okay. Okay. I think that you can see my screen.
Can't see.
Okay, thank you.
Now we see. Okay.
Okay. Good afternoon to everyone. First, thank you so much for the invitation to present here the BLC3 case study and our work. We are working in bio-supply health markets, in bio-ingredients and bio-compounds for this sector. I will present today some points about bioeconomy and some examples of projects that we are developing in this field. So BLC3 is a non-profit association, starts our activity in 2011. We have main activities in 4 areas: design ideas for circular bioeconomy, valorization and transfer of knowledge to market, support the creation of the startups, the acceleration process, the fixation of critical mass in interior regions, and final, the industrialization and market level of the RID projects. We are the headquarters. We are located in Oliveira do Hospital city. Also, we have 2 other points where we are working in Alfândega da Fé and Macedo Cavaleiros. In context of the internationalization in this area, in fact, bioeconomy is a very multidisciplinary area and very complex. We have already an international RID and industry network based on 12 countries and 83 entities. So our structure, we are structured in 4 models with the principle from idea to market. The main model is the RID center, and also we have the CAPI incubator and the business center to complete the life cycle invention. In context of the RID unit center view, we have vertical unities to development or activities and transversal unities. In vertical unities, you have four modules: citizenship, nature-based solution and territory, energy and environment, and finally forest and agri-food. So the first question about this or intervention is it possible to separate bioeconomy and health sector, taking account the trend of the health sector market? So taking account the definition of bioeconomy, it's from European Commission, we can see that it's possible to valorization the biological resource and conversion in a lot of bioproducts. One part of these bioproducts, it's possible to produce biocompounds and bioingredients for market. So I put here the context of aquatic resources because in the definition of bioeconomy in the European Commission, we also see the oceans and the seas, but we don't have the rivers and other type of aquatic resource. Agriculture is other example of blue bioeconomy. It's not present in this the definition of bioeconomy by European Commission. So when we see the macroeconomic and social macro indicators of the bioeconomy in European region, it's possible see the importance of the bioeconomy for the European region, but when you see for these values, it's possible to identify that it's very important not only the food sector, but for example the pharmaceutical sector, the manufacture of bio-based chemicals and other type of materials. This sector, in fact, the turnover, the impact turnover and the global turnover of the bioeconomy is very important. So it's a very interesting flow chart about the bioeconomy, the integrations across biotechnology application. It's possible to see the connection between the biological resource, biomass, feedstock, with the health sector for the fine chemical productions, for the production of nutraceuticals, pharmaceuticals, biocompounds that we need for the health sector. So in the final of the process and life cycle, we can use again the health sector bioproducts for increase the efficiency and the productivity in the primary production for food, feed, and cellulosic corpus and fibers. So when you analyze the social and the economic market, we can see at this moment the importance of the bioeconomy for health sector in the supply of biocompounds, bioingredients. So in other hand, when we analyze the value add in the bioeconomy in the European regions, taking account the contribution of each country, we can see that Portugal have a lot of biological resource, but in context of the value add in the bioeconomy, it's not so high comparatively with other European countries. So we need to increase the value add of the biological resource valorization. And for that, we need high value markets. For example, health markets in fine chemicals is a very good two examples for increase the value add of the bioeconomy in Portugal, and also the cooperation in field of R&D and industry sector at international level. For increase the bioeconomy sector in Portugal, it's very important the cooperation with other regions, with other countries and cities. We need to increase the capacity and value of the market. So when we want to talk about the post-COVID time, it's important to reflection about our position and our vision about bioeconomy. It's only an example. It's a very good question. 60 years of progress in context of automobile sector. In 1948, the consumption of this car was 7.5 liters per 100 kilometers. And after 60 years, the consumption is the same. The question is, we have the progress or not the progress? Of course, we have the progress in the design and the security of this product. But taking account the efficiency of the use of this product, we don't have the progress in the technology. So it's very important to design the efficient progress of the use of the technology. Other reflection about bioeconomy, when it's possible, when you see in the market, for example, biofuels. Biofuels is bioeconomy. It's not good to talk for all examples, because when you use the biological resource, we need the technology. But if in the technology, the consumption of the fossil resource is so high, in the final of the process, we don't have a bioproduct. So it's an example that it's possible to integrate in when we are talk about the bioeconomy. Sustainable criteria example is the fossil energy requirement in low life cycle. It's very important for biofuels, but not only for biofuels or bioelectricity, for other markets. It will be important to integration the dimension of the sustainable criteria in the technology, because it's not always a bioproduct when we use a biological resource. So about some examples of the BLC3 projects in field of health market in context of the biosupply. In this moment, the first example is BioPinus, is the development of the valorization of the resin for biopharmaceutical products and bioadhesives. Resin from Pinus. Pinaster is this main plant that we have in the Portuguese forest. Other example, the microbioextract project, development the bioactive compounds extraction process based on green chemistry from mushrooms productions. Is another example that we are working this moment. Other example, nature bioactive foods. We are developing bio-ingredients for the food market based on endogenous specials. In this example, from apple varieties, and in this example, from natural vegetation that we have in this region. So the final example is the Biorefinateur project. We are developing the bio-ingredients for health sector and for bio-based materials. The main proposal of this project is decrease the problems associated to the toxicity of the materials and the compounds used in our life. So my final words is, in fact, we need the bioeconomy for this time, because the post-COVID time, we need to increase the economic activity. But it's important to not forget the principles of the sustainable development, the principles of the international cooperation is to increase the cooperation with other countries, with other entities, from Portugal to other parts of the world. So thank you so much for your time, and we are free to receive your questions and suggestions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Engineer João Nunes, for your message about what may be the future of health innovation in post-COVID. We all look forward to being able to say that we are effectively in that phase after the pandemic. After this presentation, we will have a next communication given by Doutora Joana Branco. She is the Executive Director of Biocant Association. We will hear the presentation via Zoom, and the title of the communication is Biocant Fostering Portuguese Biotechnology. Doutora Joana Branco, you may start your presentation. Thank you.
Good afternoon to you all, and thank you so much for the invitation and allowing us to present the work that we've been developing at Biocant. Biocant is a science and technology park fully devoted to biotechnology, and our history has told us that our main focus it is on health biotechnology, even though we are supporting a number of companies also in the industrial biotechnology field, as well as the agro-food sector. So as I mentioned, our focus is to promote bioentrepreneurship and to support companies in different stages of development, from spin-offs up to more mature companies, in order to foster their development. We are nowadays a cluster of both companies, but also an R&D institution that belongs to the University of Coimbra. It is also a pleasure to mention that in the early beginnings of the park, which had its first building back in 2005, we were very happy to count with the support from the University of Aveiro. So we believe that we have a strategic location. We are located in the central region of Portugal, just a few kilometers away, both from the University of Coimbra and University of Aveiro, two major centers of knowledge development, but also with major hospitals and teaching hospitals that can provide a variety of possibilities in terms of collaborations for co-development of new projects. So if I would have to say, this is an aerial view of the park that currently has 5 buildings devoted to R&D and for development of the companies, as I mentioned. But we have also associated to the park an industrial area where more mature companies can join our ecosystem and still take advantages of the resources that we have available. And so in terms of resources, I mentioned the infrastructure, the dedicated infrastructures for biotechnology, and also with equipment as well. And this industrial area that we call our bioindustries nucleus that is just adjacent from the park. History tells us that in many cases, the first interaction of the companies with the park is through our shared infrastructures, so they can join our ecosystem by renting a space, fully equipped laboratory. And if the company needs to grow and have its own physical structure, they do it and still be part and take advantages of our networks, of our equipment and our services. I should say that this bioindustries nucleus is also what we call our international nucleus, because it is a point of an attraction for foreign companies. So besides the dedicated infrastructures, we also offer the companies in our park access to a number of technological platforms that can foster the development of new products and new services, always with a strong focus on innovative technologies and based on applied research. And besides this more technical support, of course, and even though we're not an incubator, we provide a number of services to support the companies. Besides this, we can also support our companies both in terms of accessing funding, but also accessing international networks to bring added visibility to the companies in the park, but also to facilitate further investments and or collaborations with international entities. I should say that we were the first national park with this focus on biotechnology, and over time we were able to attract a number of international companies. And we're very proud to say that nowadays about 20% of our companies are indeed from international origin. It is true that over time we have established a number of collaborations with these international networks. EITL is just one example of the networks that we are part of, and that can bring us access to innovative companies working throughout Europe that can then use Portugal as a test bed to further develop their services. In the past, we had the opportunity to set up memorandums of understanding with Chinese entities, but I do believe that at the time the national ecosystem was not as developed as we believe it is now. So we are very happy to revisit those protocols and to establish both collaborations to further develop technology, but also to help Chinese technologies to approach the Portuguese market, because that's where I believe that we can also be an added value, not only to help to bring to Europe new technologies and new products, but also to open the worldwide market in Portuguese-speaking countries, which is already a big share all over the country. So our focus, our main strength relies on the infrastructures, on the services that we can provide, but also on the highly qualified personnel that belong to our teams. And again, the close connection with the two neighboring universities can bring added value to projects and the further development. I guess this is my last slide. I could not finish my presentation without giving you a glimpse of the companies that we have so far in our facilities. I also would like to emphasize that during the COVID era, some of our companies managed to reorganize their activities in order to provide answers for the pandemics. So we have nowadays companies that in the early phases were able to contribute with diagnosis. We have companies developing vaccines, therapies, environmental samples on air, providing products to help in terms of research. And I think that this clearly shows that the world was able to organize their activities and to collaborate efficiently, so that in a record time we were able to provide solutions. And I strongly believe that this is a lesson, that these bridges that we are trying to establish by participating in events such as this, to set up the bridges so that we can further down collaborate and contribute for the development of new solutions and to contribute to quality of life and to tackle many of the problems that we're still facing in terms of health issues. So it is a pleasure to be here to learn more about other realities. And feel free to contact me. I'll be very happy to discuss possibilities of either of collaborating, sharing contacts, and see how can we contribute to this urgent challenge that we're facing of elderly population that needs more and more solutions to bring quality of life. So thank you to you all.
Thank you, Dra. Joana Campos, for your very positive message that closes this panel. We will now move on to next panel of this afternoon. It is about healthy and sustainable cities. To open this very interesting panel, we have with us Professor Carlos Borrego, Emeritus Full Professor in Department of Environment and Planning here at the University of Aveiro. Professor Carlos Borrego will give us a presentation entitled Circular Economy for Healthy Cities. Professor, you have the floor.
Hello, good afternoon. It's a real pleasure to be here with you, not only in presence, but also all the others that are online. Thank you for the invitation, for this interesting Congress and the ideas that are coming out. I will speak about circular economy, but sorry, I should take, okay. I will try to focus in things that can be interesting for the new cities and also that can help cities to develop in a sustainable way. Well, we have several problems. One is the world population growth, but the mystery for that reason, for that problem is very well known. The exponential increase of population, but also the expansion of the purchasing power is an important issue. The growing of urbanization, that is the people that needs to be somewhere, and the adoption of the consumerism attitude that have motivated all this increase of people inside the cities. The crisis has generated increasing need of raw materials, food, water, territory, and better air quality. All these are present in what we call for crisis in every day. And the important challenge of coming out from this issue are the massive production of waste, the shortage of water, alarming increase in air pollution and water, the scarcity of essential resources, and the volatility of resources price. It is shown here the different type of problems with water, clean air, agriculture, materials. All these are related with this today's challenge. And these and other actions have resulted in the deterioration of health of people, but not only, all living people, all living animals, danger and safety and well-being living organisms, and the risk, the high risk for organizations as well, and enormous economic losses. All this is seen every day that we go out or go in a city. And these enormous economic losses have shown that we need to change our way of looking to the economy. The linear economy is what we do now. Recycling economy was already passed. We need to have an economy where nothing is left. everything is used. And this is a strategic concept inspired in nature-based solutions. If you look to the nature, is doing exactly what we call circular economy. Then we need to transport those roles to our life of every day. This is funded on a better efficiency and sufficiency of the use of materials and energy. What is sufficiency? Well, the efficiency, everybody knows. Sufficiency is not to use more than that quantity of material to do one thing that can be done with only this material and not more. And the energy is the same. Is more efficient and productive, this is a circular economy. We do more with less, and with that we increase the value of the good. And this is important for the social economy. Also, the less can be shared and designed to go back at home, where it can be repaired, reused, remanufactured, and recycled. Finally, recycle appears, but at the end of the chain. There are a lot of other things to do before recyclation. And one is just repair and reused and remanufactured, and finally, recycle. Well, all this in mind, that was the basis for the Sustainable Development Goals approved by the United Nations in 2015. And we see that the circular economy is very well represented by the SDG 12, the responsible consumption, and also others that are indicated now by the no hunger, clean water, sanitation, and so on, and especially this one, sustainable cities and communities. We will focus more on that, but related with the circular economy as well. Okay, circular economy is something that is based in a lot of options. I will not go in detail about on all those, but is reseeking, reduce, reuse, repair, retake, redistribute, recover, recycle, and refuse not to consume what is unnecessary or choose local objects and not distant ones. If I can buy the bread, or if I can buy the fish here coming from my river, I will not go to buy fish coming from United States, South America, whatever. This is the refuse is very important as a consumerism society where we are included in. Okay, where all these people that we spoke about are living? Well, we cannot grow indefinitely. We are in a finite world. We cannot grow as always up to now, the increasing of the GDP, the gross domestic product, have always increased along all the years. And the idea is that it will stay increasing for the next years, tens of years, cents of years. Then we need really to go in a very, very specific way where the increase is not important. What is important is the quality. To do the things with high quality, we need not to increase the number. And this occurs if the growth occurs in a distributive, inclusive, and intelligent way, generating the added value for all parties involved, whether people, animals, or environment system. Also, it is important that in this debate of circular economy, we will have an urban focus, because the people just want to live in an urban area, because they have the things around. And this is important to know that now, for example, about 60% of the people are living in cities. 60% of the people in the world are living in cities. And this rapid urbanization needs to change the roles. we have to introduce new rules in this increasing urbanization? Well, what we have up to now is what we call a sustainable city. If we look at the urban metabolism, we see that for the city enters energy, food, water, goods, and so on. It is used inside the city, and the air is also used inside the city. And then there are a lot of things coming out, like emissions, organic waste, organic wastewater. Inorganic waste, everything is going out from the city. This is what looks the unsustainable city, is grow up now, clean up later. And we need to change not only what is presented, but also the way as we look at the city. And for that, we change the mind and we go to this new metabolism that is the circular city. Circular city is a new perspective of the urban metabolism, but is based in circular economy and goes to the circular city. Everything what enters does not come out from the city, is used inside. There are no waste. All the waste should be used inside the city. And this is the recognition that the actual model should change in order to integrate closed circuits and not thinking that after that I will throw away. These solutions are based in what the nature is doing. And it is important because it's the only way to keep a long-term and continuous process. Well, let's have a look about these nature-based solutions. The nature-based solutions increase what we call the urban resilience, and the urban resilience can be increased with the with the green areas, like this park in a city that is Porto. Also, the green roofs, like those that are in the figure, very green. Just at the same time, there are two roofs that are black. If you look at the thermometer measuring the temperature, is in Fahrenheit degrees, does not matter. But we see the colors very dark are low temperatures, colors very bright are high temperatures. The two roofs that are black have very high temperatures compared to the roofs that are green. And this is a very important idea for the cities because we decrease the energy consumption with this type of solutions. And it is what we need, is to decrease the energy consumption, not only through the renewable energies, but also taking the efficiency and the sufficiency. This is one of the solutions, and it is very well known by the civil engineers what to do, like it is presented on the right figure, what to do to have this kind of green roofs. But also can be done with the white roofs. You see here an old town in South Europe that has all the whole houses already white. Even the roofs are white. And what to do now to change the things? Paint white. We don't need to do more. It's only to paint the roofs. And it is important to know that it's very easy, very quick, that we can change all these things in the city. Okay, let's see some case studies in order to identify what are the good solutions, but also some new innovation services. This is a comparison about the impact of urban structure on air quality. Everybody knows that air quality is an important parameter for the people. It is related with several diseases, and also is something that everybody knows that should respire only during, we need to respire and we cannot stop the respiration because we die. Then air is really a natural resource, very important, and it is not something different. It's like water, it's a natural resource. And with this, let's see what are the influence of the cities. A compact city is some city that is a kind of high population density, low area requirements, like is in the figure, and also the mixed lenses uses are mixed inside the city. Also reduce the travel length and the number of trips. We have the opposite, that is the dispersed city, is a low population density, large area requirements, residential, commercial, and industrial are distinct zones. You know, inside our city is what happened. You go there because there are a lot of shops, but there are an industrial park. Also, high dependence on motorized vehicles because there are not good connections and everybody goes by vehicle from one side to the other. And it is a larger area. There are also another solution that is the corridor city, where the city grows in a linear corridor with origin in the center and is supported by relatively high quality transports. And this is parts where the functions are mixed and unmixed. What are the consequences of this urban structure on the air quality? Okay, if we look to one of the critical pollutants, ozone, and look at the concentrations of ozone, we see that the compact city, dispersed city, and corridor city, you have the scale here on the right, ozone in micrograms per cubic meter, and the reddish colors or yellow colors are high concentrations. We see that the higher concentrations are expected to come in the plume of the dispersed and the corridor cities. The best on air quality are the compact cities. This is what we should say to our architects when they plan an important area of the city, to take into account that they should mix the different solutions of occupation of the soil, not to put separated areas, but mix all together, as it was in the ancient cities. Okay, another situation that we have done work with the city of Aveiro is the air quality in a city avenue. This is the center, an important city in Aveiro, Avenida Lourenço Peixinho, and you see in the figure the trees, the green points that you see there, and the avenue that goes from the center of the Aveiro town to the railway station. And this is the figure, the real figure of the city that is in the middle of the figure. And we will see what are the influence of this type of city with the buildings and high and the streets in the air quality. Here you see the city and the wind and the concentration of PM10. PM10 are particulated matter. Particulate matter is the small, very small particles that are in the air. All you know this when you look at the sunshine entering in your window and you have the very quiet environment inside the room, you see the very small particles inside the room. Well, these particles are also present in the atmosphere and they transport all the pollution. And this is what we see looking at the figure, the behavior of the wind, and the wind is modified due to the structure of the city, and the concentrations are more in the northern part of the avenue, which means that there are a concentration of pollutants in this northern part of the avenue. Let's have a look to a point where a hotspot was a formation of a hotspot of pollutants. And this is the red point that you see inside. This red point is on the northern part. Let's have a look in detail. This is what happened in reality. If there are people inside the street or in the walking part of the street, they are inside this part of quite high air quality. And why this appears here? Okay, buildings with different height, they modify the wind direction and they create this hotspot in the street. A very small thing is enough to change completely what happens where we put the feet. Then this is something that is now very important because there are a lot of possibilities of doing this type of calculations. Another example, city of Porto is one of the Europeans with a high index of sprawling. There's air quality problems. There was a big heat wave in 2003, 2,099 deaths in Portugal, and Porto, 793 in city of Porto. And it is expected a warming in the future. Look at the average temperature increase in 2050 and 2100. This means 2015, you see 0.9 degrees and 3.7. Okay, we use again mathematical modeling, starting from the Iberian Peninsula, calculate the climate change from now till 2050, calculate the heat wave in Porto, and finally, in a very small part of the city of Porto, that is neighborhood of the Rua da Constituição. The idea is to simulate the heat wave, this heat wave, if it was in 2050, and then calculate what are the possible solutions to decrease the temperature in the city. Okay, this is a comparison between the baseline scenario without any nature-based solution and all the buildings in the area with green roofs. Looking at the figure, you see the temperature can decrease from -1 to -2 degrees, and even nearby the buildings, it is a decrease of temperature of -6 degrees. Or what we need is to decrease the temperature at least 2 degrees. This is a good solution to be in 2050 with a temperature that is less 2 degrees than it was if there are no green roofs. And the same happened with the pollutants. This is a simulation. The model is running. You are seeing what will happen during the day from 0 to 25 hours. And the representation is PM10 concentration, again, PM10 particles in micrograms per cubic meter. And the reddish is the higher concentrations. The baseline scenario is the city, the neighborhood of Rua da Constituição without any change. But in the other, the urban green scenario, there are not only in the middle of the figure a park that was not in the first one, and also all the buildings have green roofs. We see a 20% of reduction in early PM10 concentration after the green areas and the green roofs. Also, we see that there are an increase of wind. You will see in a moment the height concentration. Let's wait for the next simulation. You don't see the hours, but now we are going to 7 o'clock in the morning, 8, 9, 10. You see that there are a bigger concentration on baseline than the urban green scenario. Also, the influence of vegetation is very important. Now it is possible to calculate the leaf area density, the LED, in order to know what are the best trees that should be located in that position. And we see also new recirculation areas where there are hotspots information, which means that we need to look carefully to the place where the trees are located. Okay, this shows the most of the solutions from nature, and there are a lot of other things about circular economy that can be and should be implemented in a city. This is green public procurement. It is important to have cars powered by electricity, energy efficient buildings, energy produced by renewable energy sources, computer acquisition correctly, recycled paper, sustainable wood office or equipment, and organic food in canteens, but also the food production using the green roofs to have on the top of the building, like the production of different type of food, and this production is very close to the consumption. You don't need too long transport to bring the things to your house. And this is also food safety and also reduced transportation and carbon footprint. Well, other is to turn products into services, rent goods and services. We don't need to buy a bicycle. What we need is to rent a bicycle when we need the bicycle, because the bicycle is stopped during 80% of the time in front of your door. You don't use it more than 20% during all the life of the bicycle. Why to pay 80 that you don't use? Limit to go to the renting that is much better. Okay, small notes. I should not escape to speak about the pandemic part, but I'm more looking forward than looking backward. Well, the post-COVID-19 is really a new societal paradigm and has to be built based on less use of materials and energy and valuing the circular economy without prejudice to the value of public health, not just due to the pandemics, but to the safe life. And this economy is very easy to implement. Nothing is lost, nothing is created, everything is transformed. It was very, very old statement of Lavoisier that everybody knows. And this is very important. The coronavirus pandemic and the climate crisis are the message that we receive from the nature. Pay attention, because these are message and we need to try the answer. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Carlos Borrego, for this message, where we can see that health and environment are closely linked. Thank you once again. The second presentation of this panel will be held by Professor Diana Lopes, researcher at Research Unit on Governance, Competitiveness and Public Policies, who will talk about Portuguese Health Cities Network Collaborative Governance in Health Regional and Local Levels. Let's hear Dr. Diana Lopes. You can start when you're ready.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Diana Lopes, a PhD student in Industrial Engineering Management doctoral program of University of Aveiro, and I'm going to talk about a little bit of Portuguese Health Cities Network. In particular, my presentation will follow this structure. So at first, I'm going to introduce health cities concept and movement, followed by some examples of governance models for healthy cities project. I'm going to talk a little bit of different strategies that are being applied in our Portuguese municipalities, focusing on the specific case of the network of health facilities. And then concluding remarks will be presenting. So according to the World Health Organization, a health city is one that is continually creating and improving those physical and social environments and expanding those community resources which enable people to mutually support each other in performing all the functions of life and developing to their maximum potential. So the healthy city concept encompasses technical aspects related to local level mobilization of resources, formulation of plans, allocation of resources, and representational aspects which involve and include greater participation by groups outside the government, and increased transparency and also accountability in the workings of local authorities. And within this context, the health cities movement is strongly related to the main determinants of health. And here you can find a scheme developed by Whitehead and Dahlgren, developed in 1991. And it is one of the most recognized in the literature review that show us the relevance of following a multi-sectoral and multi-level approach, focusing not only on the healthcare services, but also on education, work environment, living and working conditions, unemployment, healthcare services, while considering the social, the biological factors and lifestyle factors. So the first steps in the building and the development of this movement can be traced back to 1972 with the United Nations Conference, but only in 1988 this movement was formally established. And in the particular case of Portugal, the Portuguese Healthy Cities Network was formally established on 1997. And nowadays, this network, the Portuguese network, is composed by 61 municipalities. And as you can see by the pink dots in the special representation. Okay, and it is within this context, it is important to highlight some factors that condition the governance model. And as you can see, the local authorities, the municipalities, plays a major role on implementing, designing these health cities projects, and they are strongly dependent on the internal organization and legal competencies, as well as technical resources and also the available budget. And they have to consider the big objectives coming from the World Health Organization and also from Portuguese Healthy Cities network, and considering, of course, the challenges of the territory and the population in which population live. And most important, it is to note that there are 4 patterns in terms of governance models to develop these health cities projects. And the World Health Organization identifies 4 types of governance models. The first one is the most recommended, in which projects are located in local governments. And these are recommended because they think they tend to be more effective in the promotion of intersectoral actions among different departments, and they provide also more political commitment. On the other hand, there are other types that is in which projects are centralized in one specific department, typically the health department, and they tend to favor the interests of the healthcare sector, and of course, they difficult sometimes the multi-sectoral approach. So they tend it is more difficult to negotiate with departments outside the healthcare sector. And then we have the multi-scalar share, in which projects have sponsorship and representation by different, by entities of the government of different levels. And finally, the last one, projects are set by non-profit organizations, and they tend to be politically neutral and to work closely with communities and strengthening citizen participation. In Portugal, we don't have examples of municipalities that fits the 2 last governance models, But we have here some cases like Odivelas, here some cases like Odivelas that follows the first governance model, and then Oeiras, Loures, Amadora, and Seixal, in which projects are located in a specific division or in a specific department of the local authority. Here I present some strategies that are being applied in the context of the Health Cities projects, and the main dimensions are here highlighted. So typically they try to focus on the health promotion with adapted transportation services, also on social intervention by delivering essential goods, arrangements and cleaning, transport and mobility by improving the road safety, urban planning by mitigating some architectural barriers, and also on literacy for health by preventing some risk behaviors, and also promoting healthy food and sports. As you can see here, some examples like Odivelas, that they are promoting some projects and strategies to promote healthy food for children, but also we have some activities, some strategies that tends to promote physical activities for elder people. But of course, not only in Portugal, but also in other cities of other countries, they tend to follow a conventional perspective. So they invest in one specific department to reach some impact in the respective departments. And according to experts from World Health Organization, we have to enlarge the horizon of our decision so as to follow a dynamic perspective, where each department should invest in different fields so as to impact in different fields. So this is a perspective of Professor Green from the World Health Organization. And here I put an example of the case of the accessibility to health facilities like primary health care or units or hospitals. Because as you can see, accessibility can be defined by different dimensions. And it is just a little goal, just one goal of the Health Cities project. So as you can see, 6 dimensions or 5 dimensions can condition access. For instance, approachability that refers to the quantity and quality of information made available to individuals by the healthcare system. Acceptability that corresponds to culture and social aspects that can jeopardize demand. Availability that corresponds to the capacity in terms of services or in terms of human health resources. Proximity that corresponds to the distance between population location and the service or offer points. Affordability that corresponds to the economic capacity of individuals to spend money and time to use healthcare services. And finally, appropriateness that reflects the quality and organization of the healthcare services. And as you can see, the government can act in different ways by the mediating factors, by improving the health literacy of individuals, by improving the transport and mobility, social supports, giving more information to individuals. That depends on the individuals that the primary healthcare units, for instance, are serving. And at this level, it is important to note that many studies in this field focus only on dimensions of availability of human health resources. For instance, typically they use physicians. In the case of primary health care, they use general practitioners. And also the dimension of proximity to health equipments, such as the Portuguese regulatory health entity and other academic works. And basically, they made use of gravity-based methods. I will not go deep in this, but basically it creates an index based only on a special ratio of physicians to population, weighted by the negative power of the distance between the population location and the healthcare services. And based on this, this will build an index, assigning a score to each statistical section, in this case that I present here. So the higher score have better access, and as you can see, higher scores are assigned to the metropolitan areas of Porto and Lisbon, and the lowest scores are assigned to Algarve and Alentejo. But the question is, are these models enough? Well, they could be a good starting point. Of course, they allow us to identify some geographical disparities, but according to recent studies, the value is not intuitive and intelligible for policymaking purposes. So, because at the end of the day, what is a good accessibility to healthcare services and how far we are from the recommended values? So, we can learn lessons from multi-criteria decision analysis, for instance, and other academics that give us some insights on how to deal with different complex problems with different dimensions, different stakeholders, different experts to prioritize actions. For example, for instance, the first step, it is to start the structuring phase, in which we have to identify what to measure, what criteria and indicators we should have to take into account to evaluate, for instance, the population accessibility to healthcare services. And we have here so many examples, but of course, this could be discussed with experts, stakeholders, and decision makers. But of course, demographic data should be taken into account, health profile, socioeconomic characteristics, and the characteristics of the supply side. But then we have to measure those indicators, and that could be challenging because sometimes we want to measure and we want to collect data from a specific indicator, but we have to have strategies or in an indirect way to measure those impacts related to these indicators. And one thing is impact, and another thing is value, and that's the part of analysis, because the difference between 10 and 20 minutes of distance from a primary healthcare unit could be the same between 20 and 30 minutes, but the value could be not the same because I might be not so tolerant in the second difference. So there are nowadays methods coming from multi-criteria decision analysis that could help us to translate impact into value according to different views from citizens, from experts, from stakeholders, from decision makers, from policy makers, and so on. Then we have the planning process, because in the previous step, we know where we are, but in the next steps, we want to plan, to trace objectives that wants to say us where we want to be. And to achieve this objective, we have plenty of tools, such as location allocation tools, utilization of MCDA methods and resource allocation models, and scenario building. And of course, at the end, we have to make an updating process that might be involve readjustment of metrics and the indicators and data update. So basically, it is here presented like a framework proposal that in the first step, we have the structuring phase in which we identify and describe the criteria to evaluate, for instance, the population accessibility to healthcare services, and in which we have to collect data for that criteria. And then we may proceed to the second step that involves the creation of a multi-criteria model in which we are going to convert impact into value to estimate the criteria weights, and so as we are able to partial and global evaluate our accessibility. And at the end, we also could make a portfolio selection that intends to basically to select the actions with the greatest potential to improve the accessibility following and solving the CNAPSEP problem. Okay, so as concluding remarks, health city perspective is mainly related with local scale. They have plenty of challenges to face, not only in the diagnosis process, but also in the implementation, because involve a large number of stakeholders, experts, and other institutions. Also, they face some limitations, and this is another problem that could be handled by resource allocation models, because nowadays we have to select actions and measures in the context of scarce resources. So there is a need to take and to learn some lessons coming from these new technology and tools that are now available, and to reinforce the relevance of a strong and diverse partnership network and political commitment. Okay, so I finished my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Diana, for the interesting topic that you brought us today. With this communication, we close this panel. From environment, now we move to tourism, and we will make room for reflection on the theme health and wellness, tourism cities, and regional development. Professor Zélia Breda is our next speaker, and she will talk us about Chinese outbound tourism for health purposes. You may start, Professor Zélia.
Hello, everybody. First of all, I would like to congratulate the organization committee of this conference for this interesting and very relevant topic, and also to thank the kind invitation to be part of this conference. As it was presented, my topic is about Chinese outbound tourism and specifically related to health purposes. So I will briefly start by presenting the global scenario of international tourism, as I imagine that most of you are not aware of. Then move on to China's outbound tourism very briefly, and then specifically outline the concept of health tourism, and then going through the traveling related to health tourism in China. And then concluding with some implications for destinations regarding this very relevant segment regarding the Chinese outbound tourism. So to start off, presenting some figures of 2019 prior to the pandemic. It was a very prolific year in terms of tourism. It was another year of a strong growth. It was the 10th consecutive year of sustained growth. All regions enjoyed an increase in arrivals and also receipts. So the World Tourism Organization divides the world in 5 different regions. Where China is located is Asian Pacific, is one of the most regions where obtain a very sustained growth in the last years, with China being a very well country that is pushing the region forward. And we can see in these graphs, apart from 2009, that was a year also of economic crisis that led to a decrease in international tourism in terms of arrivals and receipts. The rest was a very, and it has been in the last years, a very important sector in terms of economy, and also to drive, because tourism is considered the industry of peace, and also the establishing the link between people of different cultures. And in fact, the pandemic brought a challenge, a very big challenge for the tourism industry. So all the restrictions that were a result of the policies to break the pandemic, or at least to decrease the impact of the pandemic, also led to a major breakdown in tourism arrivals overall, and especially in Asia. So the devastating impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on global tourism is carried out until this year, with new data showing that 87% fall international tourism arrivals in January compared to the previous year, 2020, because the countries tightened travel restrictions in response of the new virus outbreaks. So according to the latest edition of the World Tourism Organization Barometer, all regions continue to experience large drops, decreases in tourism arrivals in the first month of the year. So all the testing, quarantines, and in some cases the complete closure of borders have contributed to this, and of course the vaccination was also slower than expected, so it delayed the restart of international tourism. And as I mentioned before, Asian Pacific was the region that decreased the most and have the highest level of travel restrictions still in place. So it was the most hit region as well. But based on current trends, the UNWTO expects that international tourism arrivals will be down about 85% in the first quarter compared to 2019. That was a very exceptional year. Looking ahead, the estimates, there is two scenarios, let's say, for this year. Consider a possible rebound in international travel in the second half of the year. These are based on the numbers, based on several factors, also related to the travel restrictions, so lifting these restrictions, and also the vaccination. The first scenario points to a rebound in July, so not far from now. In this case, arrivals will be still 55% below the ones in 2019. The second scenario considered a possible rebound in September, only September, leading to 25% increase in arrivals compared to 2020, and this would be still 67% less than 2019. So it's still a long head to grow. But all of this to frame the current scenario of international tourism, and of course health tourism, and China as well. But China previously, and still is, but considering the figures of 2019 that are already consolidated, it is the largest spender. That means it is the first market in terms of outbound tourism. So this is the scenario. China grew very fast in terms of outbound travel, considering that it started to develop only in late 90s, especially also to acceleration of the DAS program, the approved destination status, and also the economic growth in China. So it is a very interesting market for major destinations in the world, in Europe, and also the US and Canada. So all are targeting China as a market, especially to diversify also the sources of markets, especially in Europe, and Portugal is not an exception. So where these travelers are coming from. So Chinese, as I mentioned, Chinese outbound travel is directly linked to the economic development. Due to the imbalanced economic development in the country, Chinese outbound tourism is mostly generated in east and also southeast coastal areas. To be more specifically, this increasing the industrialization and also the greater urbanization led to the growth of important areas, urban agglomerations. Especially there is identified 5 main areas: the Beijing-Tianjin-Hebei area, centered on Beijing as a main hub. Also the Yangtze River Delta, centered on Shanghai. the Pearl River Delta centered on Guangzhou and Shenzhen, and also the Changzhou, Chongqing agglomerations and city clusters also along the middle reaches of the Yangtze River. So they constitute the areas of Chinese outbound tourism with the first three in the dominant position. So we can see that the different tiers in the country are mostly residual, especially the third tier of the country, so composing the inland areas. Where these tourists are going to. So basically, they are going to Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan. So these constitute roughly 60% of the outbound tourism. So apart from these destinations, the top 10 destinations for Chinese outbound travel are mainly Asian destinations, Thailand, Japan, Vietnam, Korea, Singapore, Malaysia, Cambodia, Russian Federation and Indonesia. And in these top 10 destinations, we can see here the United States. So European destinations are also increasing, but there is a preference for intra-regional traveling. So regarding the concept, so this is a very general framework to understand international tourism scenario and also the growth of China outbound tourism. And now moving on to the health tourism. So it congregates all travel motivated by health reasons. It can be considered that the health tourism market is not limited to people traveling for medical procedures, but also for those seeking to enhance their beauty. So we can group all these activities done under this umbrella concept of health tourism, which is a very holistic concept covering both wellness tourism and also medical tourism. So comprising these traveling for treatments, therapies, and activities to improve or maintain health conditions. There is no single definition, but as we can see, it personifies the link between tourism and also medicine, or having these both aspects to the prevent and also to improve and to treat. So Chinese health tourists were identified as more or less 2% of all outbound visitors, representing more or less 3.5 million tourists. So within this, the medical tourists represent more or less between 500,000 and million. So according to these data from global growth markets, in 2015, there was this estimate of 583,000 people traveling outside China for medical tourism, representing a 31% increase over the values of 2020. So it's rapidly growing. And this growth is set to continue with the number of outbound Chinese medical tourism surpassing and reaching 1 million, especially the numbers of 2020 indicate 800 million tourists. So these represent around $6 billion US dollars in terms of treatment, plus around 3 billion for travel-related expenses. So traveling and also accommodation, making this medical tourism segment almost 10 billion business. So this market is being driven both by changes in China's demographic and also economic development. So the research by this company, Global Growth Markets, looks into this market in terms of two key dimensions: the treatment type and also the willingness to spend. So, for instance, those who need treatment overseas have serious conditions such as cancers that cannot be treated in China, could be due to lack of drugs, approved drugs, and also insufficient surgeons or with the necessary skills, also lack of technologies. So basically there is 4 segments of medical tourism. So I'm focused more on medical tourism because it's booming and it's very interesting. Also segment for European destinations. We have these 4 broad types of outbound medical tourists from China. They are distinct characteristics based on treatment, care quality, prices, and also different factors. The first one is quality at no cost. Basically, this type of trip is not very sensitive to price and is willing to travel long distance to receive the most advanced medical technology and also from the best renowned physicians or surgeons. So reputation and also the hospital track record and specialization is very important for this segment. The second one, value for money. These trips, they are searching for better treatment quality at more competitive prices compared to those that are available in China. They include, for instance, traveling for health checks and also cancer screening, and also some more routine procedures such as plastic surgery. In these types, for instance, we can have the examples of South Korea for medical aesthetic procedures. So the price is more or less equivalent to China. So they prefer South Korea because they have greater experience. So usually they go abroad because of the quality of the procedures. The third one is prescription drugs runs. Sometimes there is a lengthy queue for product registration, and also long approval process for innovative drugs and medical services. So usually they travel outside because these therapies are not available, and also because of the regulatory costs, important dirty tax regimes. So for different reasons, they travel abroad. Usually Hong Kong and Macau are important destinations for this. Also, Southeast Asian countries are popular regarding this type of segment. The fourth one, general checkups, are the last medical tourism type of segments. People travel abroad for medical checkups and also to seek a second opinion for diagnoses that are being undertaken in China. So usually they combine medical treatments and also leisure trips. And regarding, I was already mentioning some destinations. Mostly they're located in Asian destinations. Usually they also arrange, so the tourists arrange and plan their trip for themselves from scratch to finish, but there are also some agencies to do this. So overall they choose Asian destinations for being more convenient. So it's not necessarily long distance traveling, and also for the length of the trip and also the cultural setting. Only 2% are leaving Asia. So these are the moving medical tourism destinations for Chinese. Usually richer tourists prefer going to the US or some parts of Europe. For instance, Switzerland, it's very popular for anti-aging treatments. And the US is more for surgical procedures and also for some new drug clinical trials. So these wealthier tourists prefer these destinations, while middle class prefer more affordable treatments, or these destinations where more affordable treatments are possible, namely South Korea, Singapore, or Thailand. So in terms of implications for destinations, it's important to consider some key areas. To deliver success, there are these questions that should be answered and need to be addressed, both where to play and how to win in these fast evolving markets. So basically, which segments of China medical tourists should be targeted, and how can they be the destinations can attract them. So it's more surgeries, treatments, rehabilitations, whatever. Where should we focus the product or service to be offered? Should be therapeutics areas, treatment types, what should be considered, where should we market and promote the target group and why? So it's based on price, the service, social media should be involved or not, which channels should be used, collaborations also, partners in China, and also regarding the promotion. Sorry, there is a typo, says promotion and marketing, not promotion and promotion. So based on this, even though this is in early stage of development, this segment in China, it is on the rise. This market is on the rise, and it's a very relevant market in terms of economic impact. So it's very important for the destinations to focus on quality, not only for wealthier tourists, but overall to Chinese tourists demand excellence. Also, it's very important to have employees that speak Chinese fluently rather than just having a translator. And also the price should be very competitive. So not all Chinese are willing to pay very expensive prices for quality products and services. Also should be based on experiences, offering new experiences with this individualization. So personalization is also very important. And lastly, having these visa requests, policies, and very simplified procedure related to this, because it is a very important market. So with this, I conclude. I know that I maybe have surpassed my time. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm willing to answer questions if there are any. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Zélia. We will immediately move on to the second presentation by Professor Celeste Varun, Associate Professor with qualification at the University of Aveiro, who brings today a presentation on health and well-being, tourism, opportunities and challenges, a policy perspective. Professor Celeste, the floor is yours.
Well, good afternoon. I think I can remove the mask, right? Thank you. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invitation. We are debating a very important issue, not only regarding the countries that are involved on these matters, but also the matter in itself. So today I'm going to talk about this issue, the health and wellness tourism cities and regional development. This is the general topic of this session. However, I'm going to address the topic from a more policy perspective. Zélia gave a very well introduction and a perspective from the origin market. I'm going to look at Portugal as the destination market for, well, not in specific for the Chinese or the Asian markets, but for, other countries in general for this type of tourism in specific. Well, just regarding Portugal, I think that all of us are aware of the competitive advantage that Portugal holds regarding tourism in general. Well, just to tell you and to remind that regarding the position of Portugal in terms of competitiveness in what tourism is related, Portugal is in the 12th place, ranked in the Travel and Tourism Competitiveness Index. Recall that Portugal overall is in the 34th position. So it means that it's in fact a sector in which we hold a very important competitive advantage, and that we need to take care of it and take advantage of it. Of course, considering that we need to look at tourism as a sector that brings behind it a number of other sectors, including the health sector, including the industry, and so many others, agriculture, fisheries, and so on. Well, Portugal, for the fourth year, has received the title of a leading destination, first, well, as European leading destination and also as a world leading destination. This is a very, well, it's a very demanding recognition for Portugal to keep this path and to keep the demands that this type of recognition involve. Why is it going back? Something going on with the slide. Well, regarding the visits, in the year before the pandemic, Portugal achieved, well, the highest numbers ever, 27 million guests, 17 million overnight stays, about 80.5 billion euros in tourist recipes. I'm not sure why this goes back. Some problem with the slides here with the moving on. Well, this means that in terms of the weight of this sector in Portugal, we are talking about a sector that accounts for 19.5% of the total exports and 52.3% when we look at exports in services. I'm not sure why this is happening. Also regarding gross value added, 8.5% of Portuguese gross value added comes from tourism. In terms of employment, I would also highlight 9.4% of total employment, employed population. These are numbers from 2019, 2018. So it means that this is a sector with a highly important role, not only in exports and employment, in value added, but also another dimension has to do with the regional development. Well, I really don't know why this is happening. Well, regarding the challenges, and here I'm going to link to the issue that we are addressing today, well, the issue of the health and wellness tourism in specific. 10 challenges that we have ahead regarding tourism in general and health and wellness tourism in specific. And when I say here 10-year strategy, this is related with the strategy that was defined in 2016, that in fact is very much up to date, and it's a strategy until 2027. However, we had these, the effects of the pandemic. The strategy is still valid, and as we will see, last week was launched a big plan for reactivating the tourism sector in order to overcome, well, the impact of the pandemic upon enterprises and upon the markets. However, the strategy itself is still valid. The first thing is people, and here it's a matter that is very important again for the health and wellness tourism. It's an area that it's important not only to work upon issues related with the digitalization, digital capacities, sustainability, well, knowledge related with sustainability, but also knowledge about how to interact with different markets. And here, Zelia gave here some highlights related to it. The issue, for instance, of languages. In fact, the network of schools of hospitality and tourism, they have been enlarging the offer of Chinese, well, Mandarin language in order to, well, facilitate this reception of Chinese tourists. Cohesion, a very important issue. And here again, this links very well with health and wellness tourism, because again, we have an offer in country that well, goes from the north to the south, from the inland to the islands. We have an offer that extends from the interior to the coast. So I think it's a product that will for sure promote cohesion in the country. Growth in value. A very important challenge in the Portuguese tourism is to accelerate the path in terms of revenues. Instead of looking at number of tourists, instead of looking at overnight stays, the importance here is to, in fact, to grow in value. Also in terms of the duration of the stays. The duration of the stays of the tourists in Portugal, the number is relatively low. So a challenge is to increase it. And again, this segment of tourism is a segment that has a very important potential to help our tourism to go along this challenge that we have here on this regard. Fourth, tourism all year round. Well, again, if we think about health and wellness tourism, it's a segment, again, that completely fits with this challenge that we have for the Portuguese tourism. Accessibilities, well, this is a challenge not only for this specific, this type of segment in specific for this product, but for all other products. Accessibilities, and all of us know all the discussions that have been going on about new airport, yes or no. Well, we are not going to discuss about it now, but a challenge here when you're talking about bringing in tourists from, well, countries like China or from Asia in specific, it's an issue that it's very, very important. Zelia mentioned here the issue of the visa, for sure, but again, it's a problem, but we need the problem of accessibility resolved. So it's an area that Tourism de Portugal works a lot in order to increase the number of routes coming from long distance countries in order to well, promote and to stimulate and to create the possibility for increasing the tourism between new segments and new markets, from new markets. Demand, again, as we saw, there is a demand. Well, China is the top market in terms of origin country in what tourism is concerned. So there is a demand. I'm not sure if, in fact, the demand for this type of segment is so well, if the expression is so big. It's something that needs to be very well researched in order to identify, in fact, which are the type of services that this country or the tourists coming from this country, which type of services, in fact, they search for. Well, probably they will search for services that they cannot find in their home countries. And here, Portugal, and as I will show you, has, well, a good offer, in fact, in place. 7, innovation. Again, we are talking about a sector that is a leader in terms of innovation. New solutions, well, and here we must take in consideration that we are talking about things that lead not only with physical treatment, but also with mental treatments, okay? Both things, and Portugal holds offers that are very competitive on this regard. Sustainability, again, it's a sector where the challenges are big when you talk about the health and wellness sector, but again, it's a sector that normally tends to be a leader on this regard. Simplification, again, Zelia referred here the issue of visas. It's an example. There are many others. Also because this segment, it's a segment that many often, there is a barrier related with some bureaucracies that we try to overcome and create mechanisms to overcome, although it's not easy. For instance, talking about recently, even with the Brexit, it's an issue, not in specific with the Chinese, but just an example with the Brexit, where the British also, they come a lot to Portugal to use this product. And there was a product that was launched called the Health Passport that can be, well, the target was very, very much the British citizens, but it's a solution that can be used by many other countries. So it's a health passport that allows well, tourists that want to search for this product in Portugal, it becomes easier for them to have access to the services and also to finance the services as well. And again, investment. If we want to have a supply, we need to be sure that we have investors. It's not probably the state or the government that will make this offer. So we need to have in place the best financial instruments, and the best conditions in order to facilitate the investment from private companies that want to participate in this market. Just to show you here, Zelia gave you numbers of international markets. And these graphs here, I'm just looking at on the one on the left, tourism recipes, and the darker line is the line that we were expecting to occur without the pandemic. Okay, so in 2019, we were with 18.5 billion euros receipts, and then we had a huge drop. Okay, so it's the blue line, it's the real one. Okay, from 2019, 2020, and then we made a simulation of what we want for Portugal for the next years and until again 2027. And so we want to get back on track. Again, the idea is that by 2027, we reach the targets that we had before the pandemic of over 27 billion euros in terms of receipts. So it's a huge challenge nowadays. Before the pandemic, we thought it was a very easy target to reach. In fact, we were planning to revise the strategy because we thought that the target was we would overcome it in 2 years. And then suddenly with the pandemic, we registered this huge drop. So the challenge is huge. And so that's why it was launched a plan in order to reactivate the tourism, in order to get back on track, to accelerate the transition. And well, it's a plan with 6.1 billion euros. It was launched last week. And basically it addresses 4 main issues, main areas. Again, for this segment in specific, also health and wellness. Again, the targets and the challenges are exactly the same. The first one, support firms. Again, these firms operating in this segment that also have been highly affected by the pandemic. Recall that the thermal enterprises have been closed for almost a year. They were the last ones to open. However, hotels were open. They were allowed to be open all over the period. The thermal enterprises were closed, for example. But again, stakeholders promote security. And maybe you have heard about a big action that Portugal was a leader in terms of launching the Clean and Save stamp. So in order to provide more, to provide more confidence with the tourists so they can travel. Again, this is a sector where this factor is very, very important. If you're talking about traveling for health, for wellness, so we're talking about people that are very much worried with this issue. So it's a segment where this aspect is even more accurate. We should be very accurate on this issue. Here, generate business. Again, this is how we generate business. And here, the challenge is not only to have the traditional tourists that are close by. In Iberia, we know that Spaniards are customers, very good customers of our health and wellness tourism sector. But again, the challenge is to bring other tourists from farther away, like China, like US, America in general. These 2 continents, America and Asia, are 2 continents that are targets for the future. And again, this is a segment where Portugal holds competitive advantage, and we'll see. I'll show you some of our advantages we have. Again, the last one, build the future, responsibilities and sustainability. So we need to promote the acceleration, the recovery of the sector, but again, having in mind these 2 issues: responsibility, to be sure that the local impact is much more positive than negative. And here we heard Professor Carlos Borrego talking about the issue of circular economy. We have a big, more sustainable tourism plan that was launched in October and will be now activated in order to ensure that in fact this recovery is moving towards more sustainable practices from the side of the companies and from the side also of the customers. And responsibility. We need a tourism that brings in fact more value to the localities, to the local communities. And again here, health and wellness activities are normally, well, have a very good potential to contribute to this type of tourism that we want to build. Our differentiating assets, we have climate and light, history and culture, sea, nature, and water. Well, no one can take us from not even the pandemic will take this away from us. Gastronomy and wines, events, and then emerging assets that in fact have been reinforced with the pandemic. Well-being and living in Portugal. Well, Portugal nowadays is recognized as a country that it's very good to live. And again, because of all this combination of factors, not only one, but a combination of factors, complementing, of course, our that we are well known for our hospitality and so on. And here I put the clean and safe. So Portugal, fortunately, nowadays is benefiting from a good image in terms of, well, the evolution of the pandemic. And regarding the tourism sector, there has been very has been enforced strong measures in order to be sure that these companies have guarantee all the security and all the for their guests. A number of products we have, and then of course the well-being and health. And nowadays we must think that there is in fact a new trend related with health lifestyle. So it's not only what we look at, looking at health, looking at physical and mental illness from a, because it's necessary, but because it's a way of being in life. And in fact, there is more this tendency in terms of the demand for the future, which is positive. And Portugal, in fact, has an offer that is aligned with this type of demand. What we have here in terms of supply, we have thermal centers, thalassotherapy, health and leisure infrastructures. So these are the main issues we have, and with very good quality. And then we have something that cannot be, taken from us, natural resources, in particular waters, that can be, used either in the thermal facilities, also in the thalassotherapy infrastructures. And then a complementary of other products that normally the tourists that come for this product, health and wellness, they also like to enjoy other complementary products. Wine and gastronomy, culture, nature, security and safety are for sure one of the most important complementary products that we need to look at. Regarding the demand, just or the supply we have, at the moment we have 47 thermal places. Well, we're talking about only thermal establishments, not spas or thalassotherapy, only the thermal offer. And just to show you the demand for these products. Well, on the top, we have the classic demand for thermal, for all thermal products. And then on the bottom, we have the well-being. So we see here the trend is not very, very constant, okay? In the 2019, in fact, we registered a slight increase from the classic demands. And here we must take in consideration a change in the fiscal support for using thermal services. As you know, in 2019, in 2020, and now in 2021, there is a fiscal incentive for using the thermal. So there is a fiscal benefit. When you use the thermal services, there is a participation that is possible from the government. So this has stimulated the use of the thermal services. We don't know if this will continue in the future. Well, it will if, in fact, there is a proof that this has an impact on well-being. Again, challenge that we have in this segment. First one, modernization of infrastructures. Although most of them are very much modernized, but we still have a number of them that in fact over time were abandoned, and most of these that were abandoned are public, unfortunately. They belong to some municipalities, and municipalities did not have the capacity or the knowledge to update and to modernize these infrastructures, and some of them are closed down. I remember in Caldas de Moledo, for instance, and we see that it's a pity, or in Caldas de Arego also. Then what we want as a challenge to have in most of the 5-star hotels, to be sure that we have over 50% of them with an offer of spas, okay? Another area has to do with standards. And again, we are working with the ISO standards for the thermal offer. So in order to be sure that the quality is high and that we have, that transmits more confidence also to the demand. Generate business. Well, again, I think that also Zelia addressed this issue, the need to enforce and to reinforce promotion and to identify new market segments, younger and with more payment capacity. Training, for sure. We know the challenge we have ahead. The challenges are huge in different dimensions, also in this sector. And then I would call also for the issue of the cluster. The issue of the efficiencies that can emerge from looking at this from a cluster perspective of having different stakeholders related with this product working together and trying to in fact bring more value to this product. And then the challenge overall, and this product will contribute for sure for this path, has the potential to do it. We have the players, we have demand. So let's try to implement this, and we'll see in 2027. We'll be here to check if in fact we managed to reach the target that was defined. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Celeste, for your excellent contribution. We hope that, in fact, in 2027, we can be here discussing this topic again. Let's move now to the last panel of this conference that brings us to the trends of international trade, innovation, and industry. In the impossibility to be present here with us, we will have the 3 communications by Zoom. The first one being by Professor João Carvalho das Neves, that we welcome. Professor João Carvalho das Neves is a professor of leadership and finance at the ISEG University of Lisbon and will present a lecture on the topic of promotion of healthy living habits in civil society, corporate wellness, and best practices. Let's hear him. Professor João Carvalho das Neves, you may start your presentation. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon. First of all, I would like to thank the organization for this invitation, and I find the topics very interesting. This topic that I'm addressing, so we are now more focused on personal views and the work that a person has to do by itself in order to improve his capabilities in terms of health, but also in terms of performance in companies. And in the end, I will also address in some way what leaders should do in terms of give access of employees to this type of activity. So the topic is about mindfulness and how mindfulness can help in terms of the development of health and also best practices in companies. So I start with the view of what in terms of economics is considered or has been considered in the history as the most resource. So land was considered a limitation. Then new approaches to agriculture have developed the productivity of land. Then with the Industrial Revolution, money for investment was also considered a scarce resource. So the banking industry and the restructuring of the financial system was able to solve this problem. In the 60s, 50s and 60s, after the war, the development of a large company and the need for people was also skilled people, and so universities and basic training for professionals was also able to solve this problem. More recently, we talk about talent management, so the need to have not only skilled in terms of the profession, but talent in terms of managing and leader. And so the question is, what is the actual scarce resource nowadays? When I do these courses in companies, people usually say their most scarce resource is time. I think it's wrong. Our scarce resource is not time, because we always had in our lives, in our world, 24 hours a day. And so what we need is to improve our productivity during these 24 hours. So what is the most critical source nowadays? So if we see what happens to ourselves, is that 47% of the time our mind wanders. 70% of people report that they are not being able to sustain their attention at meetings. And a normal person has something between 60,000 to 90,000 thoughts per day, without noticing that he or she has this number of thoughts, which is approximately, considering if we sleep 8 hours, we have more or less 1 thought per second. And so our most critical source nowadays is awareness, attention, focus. And because of the lack of awareness, lack of attention, lack of focus, we lose a lot of productivity. And so what we could do during the day that we are awake could be much more productive than it is now, and more efficient. And this is why we have now a new stream of books that started in 2001 with Davenport that called the attention economy. So we have an economy where attention is scarce. And later, Daniel Goleman, known by the emotional intelligence that he delivered, these messages of importance of emotional intelligence. He comes to a new book called Focus, the Hidden Driver of Excellence. And so all these books, there are many more, but I put here one that is more actual, 2020, Human Capacity in the Attention Economy. So all this stream shows that really attention is a topic very important for economy. So my question now is for you to think about what is the percentage of your decisions per day, daily decisions that are made with conscience, with awareness, with presence. So if we think about Freud, he has developed this approach to the mind, the conscious mind, the pre-conscious mind, and the unconscious mind. And how this works in practice. From the neuroscience, the neuroscience research has been analyzed the brain and how it works. And the amygdala is a center that is used to control the information that we receive from our five senses, or sixth sense too, in terms of analyzing if this is in danger for us and to protect us from death or from being injured. And so this was very, very useful for our ancestors to save themselves from lions and from tigers, because the amygdala noticed that there was an attack, and so our ancestors could run and save themselves. And the amygdala continues to have this work in our day-to-day. If we are crossing a road and a car is coming with a high speed, so we run and we jump. And so the amygdala takes control, passes the control to the autonomous nervous systems. The problem is that nowadays in companies, we are not in this situation, on this environment that is life or death. And so with the level of stress that we have in our activities, the amygdala tends to approach anything that change or is more aggressive, to consider this as an enemy, as danger. And so it gets into autopilot. And so it does not allow the information to go to the prefrontal cortex, where all the information is processed in order that we can take a rational and adequate decision. And so this is called amygdala hijacked, when the information that should pass to the prefrontal cortex is not passed to there. Mindful action is when you are able to deal with the amygdala in order that this type of information passes. So in the prefrontal cortex, there is the conscious mind And on all the rest of our brain is our unconscious. The conscious represents 5% of our activity. The unconscious represents 95%. So most of the decisions that people take during the day, most of the activities, most of the actions are not conscious, are in autopilot. The other part I think is very important for our decisions and our day-to-day operations is the insula. The insula seems that is the core of our awareness. And so being aware of what is the situation is very important because this is a basis for our decision. And the brain is also the brain that manages our emotions, our ability to empathize with others, and also understand the emotion of others. Also the ability to recognize our emotions and express our feelings verbally. So it's also the safe box of our intuition. So we have in these two parts of our brain very, very important information for deal decisions in a day-to-day basis. I have here a phrase from Viktor Frankl, that was a neuroscientist that was able to survive from the Holocaust. And he said that between the stimulus and the response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. So we have the stimulus, we have the we have here the trigger, and when we have the trigger, someone that says something to us, the brain is prepared to act, and the hijack of the amygdala doesn't allow us to have the awareness of the intention to act, and so immediately we have the response. If we are able to be aware of the intention to act, so if we have the ability to pay attention to the present moment, we are able to respond. So we have here what Viktor Frankl calls the space. So this is the space we have for a decision. But most of people, because of the level of stress and because of habits, attitudes, assumptions of their lives, and so the brain is prepared to give immediately control to the autonomous system, and the response is automatic instead of being conscious. So what is the quality of our decisions if about 50% of the time the mind is wandering, even when we need to be focused? And what is the quality of our decisions if 95% of the mind is unconscious, even when we need to be aware? And what is the quality of our decisions if we have reactive behavior, if the autopilot mode controls our attitudes and our actions instead of being more conscious? So as Napoleon Hill said, or you either control your mind or it controls you. And so for most people, the mind controls themselves without them to consider, knowing that they are being controlled by their thoughts. And so if we want to change our attitude and be more efficient in our decisions and have less stress, we need to change our mind. And so Dick Hanson, in his book, Buddha Brains, The Practical Neuroscience of Happiness, Love, and Wisdom, he says that the brain takes its shape from what the mind rests upon. So if we change our mind, we are able to change our brain. And if we change our brain, we change our life. And so when he says that the brain takes its shape from what the mind rests upon, this means that anything that we do during the day has an impact in the brain. And so there are a lot of research in neuroscience that shows that meditation and mindful meditation have the ability to change our mind. I put here a definition of what is mindfulness and what is meditation, because I see that most of times people are a little bit puzzled about what is meditation and mindfulness, and there is a confusion between what is one thing and what is another. So mindfulness, according to John Kabat-Zinn, that is the person recognized to implement and develop mindfulness for health in the West. He says that the mindfulness is the awareness that arises from paying attention on purpose in the present moment, non-judgmentally. So mindfulness is actions when we are paying attention on purpose in the present moment and without any judgment. And so we can be in mindfulness doing a lot of activities. When we eat, we can be in mindfulness. When we read, we can be in mindfulness. When we run, we can be mindful. When we do gardening, when we cook, when we play music. So there are a lot of activities that even to do these activities well and with quality, we need to be in mindfulness. Meditation is a form of mental training that aims to improve the individual core psychological capacities, such as attentional and emotional self-regulation. So it's a mental training. And mindfulness meditation is a type of meditation, a type of training. There are many meditation practices. Mindful meditation is one type of meditation, but there are mantra meditation, there are transcendental meditation, there are Zen meditation, Tibetan meditation. When you do yoga, Tai Chi, Qigong, in order to practice it well, you need to be in mindfulness and do also meditation on these practices. The other impact that we have also in our brain is what is happening in our environment. So 50 years ago, the environment was very clear, and so we could predict in some way what could happen to ourselves, to our companies, and we could program relatively well. Nowadays, we have a lot of uncertainty. And this level of uncertainty, the mind of most of us is unable to work with this uncertainty. So we also need to train the mind for dealing with uncertainty. Otherwise, this is why many people nowadays are completely exhausted and they feel they are unable to respond to the demands of all the requests they receive from employment, from home, from children, and so on. So stress is a problem and it contributes to illness, or eventually exacerbate already some health problem that the person has. And so here is a list that I take from this book, The Relaxation Revolution. And so it's proved that stress may create all these problems. However, our brain has this ability, and so this was already discovered in research during this century. So there was the idea that the brain was developing until the age of around 20, 25, and after that, let's say later 25, 30, the brain starts losing its abilities. And so what this study from the Harvard Medical School shows is clearly that the people that practice meditation have an ability to stabilize and even to improve with age if they train. And so coming back to what Rick and Anson said, that just to remind what he said that the brain takes its shape from what the mind rests upon. And so what we need is to develop activities during the day in order that we create new neural patterns that are beneficial for our life, for our health, for our behavior. And so the practice of paying attention to good things that happen in our life is very important. The practice of gratitude. So each time we notice something that was offered to us or any attitude for someone, we should be able to be aware of this attitude, of this action, and practice gratitude. We may also practice gratitude, for example, in the end of the day, do a review of what happened during the day, and have a meditation at that time with gratitude for what happened on that day. And so if you do this, we are creating neural patterns of gratitude and neural patterns of paying attention. If we practice mindfulness, meditation, Qigong, yoga, and so on, so all these practices are practices that are very, very useful also to create these patterns and to train the amygdala not to be so reactive. Take walks in the countryside, and when you walk in the countryside, pay attention to your thoughts, pay attention. It's not necessary to have these thoughts, and pay attention to the environment, pay attention to your body, pay attention to your breath, pay attention to your sensations in your body. And so in the end of the day, try to find a moment where you bring peace to your mind at the end of the day, in order that you cut from the excess of activity during the day before you go to bed. And so when you go to bed, you don't go to bed with preoccupations, but you go to bed for resting. I usually practice mindfulness meditation before I go to bed in order to create this peace of mind. You may observe what went well and pay more attention to things that went well, not to things that went wrong. Because our brain is designed to think about negativity. And so we need to contrast this trend to an attitude that is based in more positivity. So all good habits are important to create neural networks patterns that help to avoid reactivity and being in autopilot. So it's important to develop awareness to the present moment. And if you have awareness of the present moment, you notice what is happening at that moment, the reaction of the people that are with you. And so you are able not to react to the situation, but you are able to manage the situation. And so what the Harvard Medical Center proposed, and this slide is taken from them, is they propose that you start your day with a basic yoga sun salutation, or I would say with any training that bring you attention to your body with stretch. Take a break to check in with your breathing during the day. So from time to time, just a few seconds, pay attention to your breath, pay attention to your body. And at the end of the day, relax with a guided meditation and do a body scan, paying attention to any tension or stress that you may have on your body. So as a conclusion, with mental training, such as mindful meditation, for example, you can change your brain activity patterns, the structure of your brain, in order to change your emotional style and thus manage and improve your health and quality of life, and also of those that you lead or you are in contact with in your job, or with the people that live with you. Because if you are more stable, if you are more calm, and if you address the issues with more rational approach and intuition instead of reaction, people will notice and feel more comfortable talking to you and discuss with you. With the development of attention, you start to have access to your conscious mind, so you are less in autopilot, and so you are able to take decisions with much more emotional intelligence, and therefore you get better results for you and for everyone else that are involved. So thank you.
Thank you, Professor João Carvalho das Neves, for this useful reflection on healthy living habits. We continue along the same line of discussion with the presentation of next speaker, Honorable Dr. Peter Dedman, author of the book Live Well, Live Long, Teachings from the Chinese Nourishment of Life Tradition, that will speak about Yangxiang, Nourishment of Life. Let's hear his presentation.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you for inviting me. I'm speaking from England, where the sun has finally decided to shine. It's the first sunny day we've had for weeks and weeks and weeks. So I'm going to just say a few words about what is called Yangxiang. So China has a 2,500-year-old tradition of cultivating health, known as Yangxiang, the nourishment of life, which teaches the best way to maintain health and well-being and to maximize our lifespan. It comes from a number of sources, from Taoist philosophy, from Confucianism, from Buddhism, from Chinese medicine, from Qigong and the internal martial arts, and from folk medicine. And it offers guidance really for a whole life, from birth right through to adult life, how to live as a successful human being. The Yellow Emperor's Inner Classic, the Neijing Suwen, is the earliest foundational book of Chinese medicine, written between 200 years before the Common Era and 200 years after the Common Era. It's striking how far ahead of its time it was in understanding the causes of disease. Not gods, not demons, not witches, just ordinary human behavior. On its opening page, the Yellow Emperor asks his advisor, Qibo, why in ancient times, and remember this was written 2,000 years ago, people lived to over 100 years of age and still remain strong. Nowadays, he said, at the age of 50, they're already worn out. Qibo answers, he could have been speaking today when he says that people of old knew how to live. Their eating and drinking habits were moderate, they led a regular lifestyle, they modeled their behavior on the interplay of yin and yang, that means they followed the natural order of things. By contrast, he says, people nowadays, 2,000 years ago, drink alcohol as if it was water, indulge in unrestrained sexual behavior, have no idea, he says, what it is to be satisfied. They want quick pleasures. The whole pattern of their lives, their rhythm of waking and sleeping is without moderation. They can't even make it to 50 without going into decline. So that really tells us this really early understanding of how lifestyle and behavior affects our prospects of health and longevity. And then in the second chapter, Qibo makes it clear that prevention is the highest form of medicine. He says the sages, the doctors of old, didn't treat those who were already ill, but those who were not yet ill. Treating disease after it has begun, he says, is like only starting to dig a well when you're dying of thirst, or only starting to make weapons once the battle has started. Is that not too late? Many of the greatest doctors throughout Chinese history were advocates of the nourishment of health tradition. For example, the famous 3rd century Dr. Huatou developed the 5-animal Qigong practice. Ge Hong, the 4th century doctor and alchemist, who incidentally was the first to identify the herb Qinghao, Artemisia, as beneficial for malaria, leading to the 20th century Chinese discovery of artemisinin, a powerful anti-malarial drug. He wrote, "The body should always be exercised, food should always be minimal. Yet even in exercise, do not go to extremes, and in minimizing food, don't go to emaciation. Don't, in other words, eat enough." And then Sun Simiao, so famous in Chinese history that he's known as the god of medicine, wrote in the 7th century, "Avoid anxiety and worrying, great anger, avoid sorrow and grief, avoid fear if you can, and even avoid too much speaking." All of these are harmful to long life. So what is Yangxiang? It covers many different aspects, but I would say the 4 pillars, or I often use the image, the 4 legs of the chair. So when a chair has 4 legs, it's stable. Take 1 leg away, it already becomes a bit unstable. 2 legs away, it's very difficult to sit on. So we have 4 legs of the chair, basic legs of the chair are of good health, and we need to cultivate them all. The first is taking care of the mind and emotions, managing our emotional and mental life. Second is diet. The third is the right balance of appropriate exercise and rest. And the fourth is sleep. And then the Yangxiang tradition also discusses our sex life, care of pregnancy and babies, the importance of connecting with nature and music, managing our old age well, to have a successful old age and even to have a successful death. The aims of Yangxiang were, first of all, to help the body resist infectious disease, the number 1 cause of death for most of human history. The teachings of Yangxiang say that if we can keep a quiet and contented mind, eat sensibly and appropriately, cultivate the body with practices such as slow deep breathing, qigong, which in those days was called Daoyin, and meditation, then our immune system will be strengthened. At the same time, we'll be able to reduce the risk of developing chronic disease and increase our chances of living long. And if we also cultivate contentment, gratitude, generosity, kindness, friendship, and intimacy, then we increase our mental well-being and slowly develop wisdom. When we look at the health of the global population today, we can see how badly these lessons are still needed. So chronic, non-infectious diseases such as cancer, heart disease, diabetes, dementia, strokes, and mental diseases such as depression are steadily increasing all over the world. They're expected to double in the next 20 or 30 years, with the fastest rise in developing nations as they copy the lifestyles of the developed world. No medical system, however well funded, can afford to treat and support such large numbers of sick people. Remembering also that once chronic diseases have arisen, it's very difficult to cure them. So patients are likely to require medication for the for the rest of their lives. They are likely to require meditation. And of course, while people are living longer now in most parts of the world, the last years, or even the last decades of their life, are often spent suffering from ill health and disability. So it's simple and obvious that the future of medicine must lie in prevention. Yangxiang learns from nature, particularly from the Taoist observation of nature, without preconceived religious belief, which can obstruct clear observation. And it draws on the core Chinese philosophies of yin-yang harmony, the middle way, and the idea of free flow of qi and blood. And I believe it offers the most complete understanding of health and disease that human culture has yet come up with. However, there are some gaps in the traditional Yangxiang teachings. So while it's true that we each have a responsibility for our own individual health, we increasingly understand how important social, economic, and political factors are in health and disease. For example, economic pressure, poverty, and work stress are major causes of illness. Women who are poor, for example, are likely to give weight to children of a lower birth weight, and that is a predictor of impaired development and an increased risk of lifelong mental and physical sickness. Overwork, caused by economic or social pressures, is also increasingly understood to be a major cause of ill health. As Sun Simiao, the 7th century doctor I mentioned, reminds us, one of the profound teachings of Chinese medicine is how much our emotional state affects our mental and physical health. Acute or long-term chronic anxiety, fear, and fright, for example, can increase the risk of all the chronic diseases. We therefore need our governments, our societies, we need our governments to build societies free from fear, free from political oppression, free from economic hardship. And we need them to promote equality, support for all citizens, and individual freedom of expression. These are the basic political and cultural necessities for a population to be healthy. And of course, the greatest single threat to human health is an entirely modern one, unthought of by our ancestors, and that is climate change. Unchecked, climate change is likely to cause untold suffering, sickness, and death. One of the great lessons of Yangxiang, the Chinese nourishment of life tradition, and this especially comes from the influence of early Taoism, is that we're not separate from nature, the natural world. We are an intimate part of it. So when we injure nature, we injure ourselves. So ultimately, the Yangxiang tradition is not just about the health of individuals. It's inseparably concerned with healthy communities and a healthy planet. So that's a brief introduction to Yangxiang. If, I'm going to advertise now, if you're interested and you want to find out more about it, this is my book, Live Well, Live Long, Teachings from the Chinese Nourishment of Life Tradition. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Peter Deadman, for your valuable contribution. We closed this panel with an outlook brought by Professor Enrique Galin, member of the Board of Directors of the Asian Development Bank, who will talk to us about global value chains for health and wellness sector. Professor Enrique Galin, you can start your presentation.
Yes, thank you for the invitation. I would like to thank the Portugal's Belt and Road think tank and also the University of Aveiro for allowing me to join this conference today. And I regret not being able to be in Aveiro. If I resume the issue raised by Professor João Carvalho das Neves today about time attention, I recall in my early days in the seminars that I took that attention span of an average adult is 7 minutes. So I hope I can have your attention during most of my presentation, which will take not more than 10 slides and and hopefully 10 minutes. So I was challenged today to make the connection between global value chains and the health Silk Road, and I will do it in three main areas. First, I will focus on the impact of the health Silk Road on connectivity. Second, I will explain a bit the effects of the health Silk Road on global value chains. And finally, I will discuss two visions of the health Silk Road, one from China, another one from the European Union. And I would like to conciliate in the end, in my final slide, the two visions. So first about the health Silk Road, or in this case, the Belt and Road Initiative as a whole, before focusing in health. If you're interested, there is a bunch of slides at the website of the World Bank, where they discuss what they call the economics of the BRI, of the Belt and Road Initiative. And they present several figures that I would like to share with you today. First is that the gap in infrastructure in the region is huge. The Asian Development Bank that I represent today estimated that between 2016 and 2030, developing Asia will need, just to cover, to maintain growth momentum, eradicate poverty, and respond to climate change in the region, will need around $26 trillion. That's almost 200 times the GDP of Portugal, just for a reference. Second, the World Bank also estimates that currently the BRI economies undertrade with each other by around 30%. That's a huge number in terms of trade. And third, what the World Bank also estimates is a comparison between the time to import these days between BRI countries against the G7. You can see on the graph on the left that the G7, the time to import, it's a couple of days on average for the G7, but for South Asia or for East Asia and the Pacific, it's around 50 or more than 100 hours. And then also, not only in time, but in terms of tariffs, as you can see on the graph on the right side, regions of South Asia and again, East Asia and the Pacific, they are much higher than those we see in the G7 countries. So they do something very interesting at the World Bank. What they do is they estimate the gains, the time saved by the BRI infrastructure in communication, in connectivity along the Belt and Road Initiative. As you can see, no country is white in color. That means that all countries benefit, even those that are far from the Belt and Road Initiative. But if we focus in some areas, we see that countries, particularly in Central Asia, Turkey, in Southeast Asia, and the east coast of Africa, they benefit a lot from the connectivity that is brought forward by the BRI. If we move from the time to the gains in trade, actually the picture is very similar. What the World Bank does is that they translate time into trade flows, and they estimate that per country and per sectors. Of course, improving trading times increase trade in those sectors that are more sensitive to trade, of course, like obviously for obvious reasons, livestock. Each day gained in trade brings a lot of gains because of the time, of the duration of these goods. Then countries that are already highly exposed to new infrastructure and integrated in global value chains have lower gains than those that still are less connected, and the initial connection brings higher gains. That's why we see, for instance, in the graph, that countries that benefit the most are Uzbekistan, with almost 13% estimated of gain in trade, or Iran, or Myanmar, or Vietnam. Still, we see a 3% increase in Turkey, or a 1% increase in Greece, which even for developed countries is very significant. Now moving to the effects of the Belt and Road Initiative on global value chains. For the reasons that I explained in my previous slides, there are special opportunities for some countries or some sectors that in theory could benefit more from this connectivity. Of course, one is China. China is leading the initiative, and Chinese firms and banks, development banks, are the main stakeholders and the main players in the initiative. So of course, they benefit. But as I said, regions like Central and West Asia or Southeast Asia, they benefit not only from the connectivity, but also from the technology spillovers and benefits and knowledge that the industrial parks and the free economic zones that the BRI sets in those countries spreads into those locations. Also, those regions which are more isolated and lagging, they also benefit in these two venues. One is that they have higher connectivity, and second, they also benefit if they receive some of these industrial parks. But opportunities are there for all. And just summarizing what I already said, all countries benefit from improving cross-border infrastructure, from reducing trade costs, for improving investment, climate, for improving employment and growth. And in particularly, those that benefit the most are actually SMEs, small and medium enterprises, because those large multinationals, they already have the resources to fight and to overcome these hurdles on infrastructure and cross-border connectivity. But SMEs, normally they don't have those resources. So if this connectivity increases, they will benefit by definition largely. Now and that's the third part and final part of my presentation, focusing on the health Silk Road. As we all became aware in the last year, unfortunately, the COVID-19 pandemic has exposed weaknesses in the global value chain and supply of medical and personal protective equipment, such as respirators, surgical masks, hospital gloves, protective garments, and so on and so forth. This graph here, what it shows is that even in the pre-pandemic times, China was supplying around 50% of most PPEs, of most personal protective equipment. It was also the largest supplier in the European Union of certain drugs, but particularly, for instance, you can see that for mouth, nose protection equipment, the weight of China on the European Union imports was more than 70%. So the concentration was very high, and that creates, for obvious reasons, a weakness for the European Union. Looking forward in the health Silk Road, I would like to present to you the two visions that summarizes how China and the European Union looked into this health Silk Road. So first, from China, what they aim at is four main goals, if I can say so. One is claiming leadership in regional and global health governance. Just as a reference, China doubled its support for the WHO last year. Of course, this has to do with the geostrategic rivalry with the United States during the Trump administration, but still, it helps this health Silk Road China to claim leadership regionally and globally in health governance. Second, it allows or it helps China to become a world leader in many sophisticated medical devices. If you take a look to the initiative Made in China 2025, it lists among its 10 strategic high-tech areas where China wants to become self-sufficient and also a world leader. It lists two that are health-related: biotechnology and high-end medical devices. Third, with the health Silk Road, what China looks or seeks is also to increase investment in the manufacturing of basic health equipment along the BRI, in the BRI countries, in those industrial parks and free economic zones that I mentioned before. And finally, these raise in the role of China in the world in health also allows countries to promote their digital health and biotechnological standards. And that's why one of the pillars of the BRI, and in particular of the health Silk Road, it involves people to people, not only infrastructure, in terms of capacity training, scientific exchange and cooperation, and of course also the construction of basic public health infrastructure. Then moving to the vision from the European Union, the key word that we heard last year is this concept brought forward of the open strategic autonomy. That was the response of the European Union to the weaknesses identified during the pandemic. Of course, European Union is very keen on free trade ideologically, but at the same time, this free trade per se brings several weaknesses. So the middle ground between both approaches would be this open strategic autonomy. And the weaknesses identified, as Josep Borrell said in one of his interviews, it is not normal that the European Union does not produce 1 gram of paracetamol these days, or that 90% of the active pharmaceutical ingredients used for generic medicines are sourced from India and China alone, from 2 countries in 2018, 90%. So answering to that weakness, the Commission adopted some months ago what they call a pharmaceutical strategy that aims at addressing this vulnerability, sustainability and security, in particular of pharmaceutical supplies. One of the key areas of this strategy is seeking diversification of the supply chains, bringing those products from India and China to closer countries to the European Union, in the neighborhoods such as the Western Balkans, Maghreb, or even Sub-Saharan Africa. So, and this is the last slide that I would like to share with you today. I would like to conciliate these two visions and present to you which I believe is the most likely scenario that brings together these two visions. So most likely, as we saw already, the Chinese health producers will continue delocalizing, first to countries such as Vietnam. We saw that in the preferential trade agreements that Vietnam has with the European Union and the United States, that allows somewhat to diverse trade and run away from the difficulties that the Trump administration of the European Union in some areas was creating to the Chinese products. And we saw the same in Thailand. That would be one main development. The second would be that this delocalization that the European Union is seeking to neighboring countries in health products, trying to diversify the producers, could be affected by the fact that these same Chinese health industries will also delocalize to those locations in Europe in the context of the health and Silk Road. We will see that, and we already do in countries such as the Western Balkans, in Serbia particularly. It would be a possibility also to move within the European Union to more allied countries such as Portugal or Italy, or to those countries with privileged trade relations and potential for health-related investment in the Maghreb or in the eastern neighborhood. One good example, and we already see some localization into Georgia, which benefits from a free trade area both with China and with the European Union. And that's what I wanted to share with you today. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Professor Henrique Galin. It is a very fruitful way of ending this cycle of presentations today. We now have a moment for questions. If someone by Zoom or here in the auditorium wants to ask any question to our speakers, please feel free to ask now. We're just checking if we have questions in Zoom. No. For reasons of professional commitments, the Ministry of the Territorial Cohesion can't be with us as foreseen in the program previously. We apologize for this. And having handed the presentations for this conference today, now it's time to thank you all once again to all the participants of the conference, members of the organization, institutions involved, participants and speakers. Above all, we would like to thank to all those who attended us and spent this day with us remotely or physically. A word of recognition to all. Resta-nos agradecer mais uma vez a todos os participantes nesta conferência, membros da organização, instituições envolvidas, participantes e oradores. Sobretudo agradecer a quem nos assistiu online ou aqui presencialmente e passou o dia conosco. Uma palavra de reconhecimento e apreço a todos. 感谢所有人的参与. Obrigada.